Doke. Let me give everyone a look at our extensive agenda tonight. So we'll do some public comments, and then we're going to jump right into our brand and logo presentation. Yeah, so that's that. Any public comments? No? All right. Perfect. We'll jump right in. So we're going to get into our brand and logo presentation. Some of you have heard part of this spiel before. We've made some edits since the first time around. Give a little bit of background. Gabby and I have been working with Mickey and who's our graphic designer, and Josh, our photographer, for I don't know, about 6 months now. Our first major project was the elections that Lizzie chaired up. And as we were going through the process of creating different materials for the elections, we kind of kept coming back to the same question of like, we didn't have any kind of base to kind of spring from our ideas. We were just kind of, we came up with, I think, a lot of really valuable materials, but we realized that we wanted to really have some answers to questions about who we are as a brand, what UNNC is as a brand. So we engaged with, you'll hear more about exactly our process. But what we have now is a brand presentation, along with a logo exploration that we're going to share with you guys tonight, and then also share with the entire board at the September board meeting. I feel like we've been really fortunate to work with Mickey, who again is our graphic designer, but he's really much more than that. His professional experience lies in working with brands to kind of create brands and create definition of brands, and he's done that for us. We really lean into a lot of his expertise in guiding us through this process. That being said, it's been a really collaborative effort with Gabby, myself, Mickey, Josh, our photographer, and even Dennis, who just recently joined our little creative team. So really excited to show you what we've come up with. And without any further ado, Mickey, you can take it away.
Cool, thank you. Thanks for that intro. You kind of like stole some of what I was going to say, but it's fine. I'm just kidding. So let me see if I can share my screen here. Everyone see that? Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Cool. And then when I do this, do you still see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I think we already have a question, Teresa.
Yeah, I was just wondering, can everybody go on mute? Because when other people are talking, I lose the speaker. So until you take questions, it would work better for me.
Sure. And then if anybody does have a question while we're going through it, just raise your hand and we'll get you.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I think, Raheem, you teed it up really well. And I think a lot of our work was sort of answering the immediate needs, as opposed to really kind of operating from a central core and really doing things with a strong why. And I think this presentation really seeks to establish that why and a way to answer it, and making sure that all of the sort of beautiful design work that we want to do going forward is not just nice to look at. It's actually doing the work that we hope it should. So the sort of structure of the presentation is understanding, the sort of core objectives of this exercise, which is sort of creating a strategy and a brand, how we went about doing that, and then really a sort of synthesized version of what we learned throughout that process. And sprinkled throughout, you'll see where we didn't synthesize at all. We just kind of took the words directly from the board members and the committee members, and really showing people speaking what they believe UNNC is, which is great. And then what it looks like in the state of current trends as far as brands go, regardless of kind of what space they're operating in. And then some conclusions we believe about what the brand needs to hold going forward, a promise, which is the aspirations for the brand, how it'll behave, how it'll work, the pillars, which are sort of the ideally like the emotional impact that will be achieved with the brand, and then the concept and some logo directions and kind of our idea on how the brand lives. So as I said, the why, really we wanted to, and as we understood it when we were speaking to everybody, especially during the election time, when we were doing a lot of work for the advertisement of the election, we really wanted to clarify what UNNC is to our stakeholders. We felt like that there's really a misunderstanding, kind of a broad stroke misunderstanding about what UNNC actually does. We also feel like there's a real need to elevate the UNNC profile to the stakeholders, as well as build sort of a broad scale awareness across the 6 regions. Purposefully express the character of the organization. There was a lot of talk about sort of who we are as a group and how we can better express that and hopefully increase engagement through that. Also, further establish UNNC as a trustworthy and reliable liaison to the city. I think that's really sort of putting purpose to our mission and people understanding really what the core is of what UNNC does, and then deepen the connection within the community, through what we believe is active participation. And we have some suggestions that you'll see later on. So the way we went about this was through a number of means. We started with interviewing committee chairs, where we had roughly 30 to 45-minute discussions, a set of questions, and really those kind of meandered in a variety of ways, but we got a lot of information out of them. And then the people that we didn't get to speak directly to, we did a survey for, and we had 22 participants in that survey. And then Josh and I, we had spoken with community stakeholders and business owners while we were going out photographing, or while Josh was photographing the neighborhood, or neighborhoods rather. And then, as Raheem said, our internal discussions were, really vital to this process and really kind of honing in and synthesizing the information that we received. So over the next couple of slides, I'll say the next 10 to 15 slides, you'll see a variety of responses that we've got, and also our interpretation of some of those responses, and then beginning with some of the research that was done and the responses to that research. So the top 3 most important issues that we heard from the 22 members that responded to the survey as to what is important in the identity of creating what UNNC is, in terms of brand, is local government engagement. So really clarifying kind of what that role is, especially the tension in between sort of the people, the stakeholders, and the policy, the neighborhood history, understanding kind of our background, and then neighborhood outreach, local engagement. We have sort of answers to those down the road. We'll see that in a bit. So in this question, we realized that more than 75% of the survey participants believe that people living within the UNNC neighborhoods would not recognize the UNNC brand, which obviously hinders engagement. 50% of the survey participants believe that the current UNNC brand does not convey the character, values, or purpose of the organization. So again, we're seeing that there's a bit of a misdirect here that we really wanted to latch onto, especially as we kind of went through the process of thinking about the new brand, or I should say the evolved brand. So first and foremost, something that we heard was our community is diverse and it is important to us. It informs every decision that we make, and that should be sort of at the core of who we are. We thought this was a great way to say this. Lizzie had mentioned this: convey a message that we are inclusive, diverse, and we can help each other and improve our lives for the better. Very straightforward and direct. We like that. Something, and this is something that we've discussed internally that will need to be kind of fleshed out if we do decide to pursue this, how we speak and how we engage with our group, our members and our stakeholders. Not just internally, but externally as well, or not just externally, but internally as well. speaking the language of all is an exercise in communicating with active listening. So it's about sort of receiving information, not just kind of expelling it or giving it out. This was a great quote from Gregory Jackson. It's not about closing out an agenda item. It's about opening a relationship, a chance for connection. So we feel like UNNC's focus, again, it's a lot about people, but sort of looking at it through different lenses. We're a people-focused organization, and our currency is clear communication. So right now there's a bit of sort of misunderstanding about what it does, who it is, and how it operates. And we feel like there's a real opportunity to clarify that and boost engagement through that. This is sort of about the history of the neighborhood, which, as we noted before, is a really important part to the identity. And Hugo Rodriguez had said this: understanding how an organization was formed and how the neighborhood came together tells me how it will be, how it will operate. So our past informing our future, again, something that we bring in later on. As noted in kind of the last time we discussed, there's, beautiful craftsman houses, but not just the craftsman houses, there's all sorts of different architecture. And, we can speak about that literally, but each neighborhood within the 6 regions has its own texture, has its own rhythm. And that's really something interesting and unique that we want to capture and bring into our brand. And we should be speaking about it. A former board member, Tori, had said this: it's about compassion. It's about showing concern for our neighbor. Again, talking about empathy, talking about inclusion. And this was the last bit of information that I feel like does a good job of kind of summarizing everything. But it's really a place where life happens, right? There's all of these different moments and sort of collisions of people and things going on that life really happens within the bounds of UNNC. And that's something exciting and something that should be kind of worked into our brand story. And then again, Greg Jackson, he said a lot of good things, by the way. These are just 2 that we pulled out. We must be a translator of policy, an organization that scaffolds policy. So translator is such a great word because it's that in between that we have to we ride that line of being in between people and policy, but there's a inherent sort of action in that. And then speaking of action, that demystify and do was our sort of synthesized version of this need for transparency that we heard over and over again. So establish a culture of trust and care, both internally and externally, something that our brand could help kind of bolster that, or at least we think it can. And then, as I mentioned, so these were sort of the top things that we heard throughout our meetings, throughout our different conversations, the surveys. What does that look like in the context of today as it relates to a brand? So there are 2 themes or trends that we really tapped into that are so important today and really do influence how a brand engages with its target market, if it's a corporate business, or in this case, it's stakeholders. But authenticity is so important. We see it across a variety of different platforms. People want stories, people want the truth, people want to know, really who they're dealing with in whatever sense, whether it be a product or a service. Experiences are king. That's our way of saying basically brands no longer exist solely in a logo, solely in a website. There's obviously been a rise in social media over the last decade plus, but it's really more about that living out the brand. So we have our example of that is in this left-hand corner here, which is Casper. It's a mattress brand. They've opened up several retail. Now, the known thing in real estate, in US real estate across the board in all major cities, is that retail is dying, right? That's what people have been saying. But Casper, a direct-to-consumer brand, has opened up several retail stores so that their target market can experience the mattress firsthand. They even have like sleep-ins and things like, I don't know what the situation is right now with COVID, but that just gives you a sense that really people are craving sort of person-to-person contact, creating an interpersonal relationship with the brand. So these are our conclusions from everything that we've done over the last couple of months. we believe the brand must speak the language of all. And as we know, that's listening, that's creating a dialogue. The brand must be inclusive and symbolic. It represents sort of that in between of, people facing and policy facing. And that's true for this next one as well. The brand must be authoritative but approachable. It's got to have some sort of establishment and authority to it, but we also want it to be friendly and welcoming. The brand must be bold and captivating, as we saw in some of the feedback that we've heard, and some things we'll see as we look at the current logo. We really need something that's going to kind of ensnare the attention of our stakeholders. And be long-lasting and memorable. Excuse me. The brand must be empathetic. I think that goes back to our very first point, where we're a people-focused organization, and we always need to be kind of operating with their best interest. So, sorry, I'm struggling here. That leads us to our brand promise, which is, in theory, this is one statement to encapsulate all of what the brand should be sort of communicating. And I'll just read it. Hopefully we do that, but obviously this is something that can be refined over time. And something to mention throughout this entire presentation: none of this is really yet ready to hit print on, so to speak. This is an ongoing process. This is an evolution. These are kind of where we are the culmination of our research and everything that we've done to date. But it's certainly an iterative process, and we still have some time to go. That said, so we seek to define UNNC as an organization that exudes an honest and empathetic approach to neighborhood council, with respect for and empowered by its history and its people. Providing local services to its community of stakeholders, it acts with stewardship, direct communication, and undeniable commitment to the quality of life for all. Hopefully that summarizes things pretty well. And then, as I said, our pillars are really the feeling that we kind of want to be left with after we've engaged with our brand. So we know that it needs to be empathetic, right? There has to be a human component to it. Advocacy, we feel, again, sort of leaning into that middle space of authoritative but approachable. We're working on behalf of the people that are within our borders. Trustworthy, this was mentioned a couple of times in the interviews. We really need to build a sense of trust, not just externally but internally. And then unifying, and I think this is one of the strongest themes that we've seen throughout all of our conversations and all of our research. There's this there, and I think it's sort of the byproduct of the other three. But I think there's this constant bringing people in, bringing people to the table, and liaising on their behalf or working with them. And then hands-on, I think there's a human component to this that is true for empathetic, but I think this speaks to sort of the hardworking nature and the way. And I feel like I'm thinking about Tori when I say this, but she kept saying compassion, but I think there's this, like, she wanted people involved and really, really there. And I think that's a great mentality to keep, especially as we're kind of looking forward. So the concept that we came up with that felt right to us was this idea of the moments that make us. And it's a bit of a play on words, but I think there's all of these defining moments where we have a chance to connect, to really kind of exchange and be neighbors and be communal. And I think that happens every day within UNNC, and not just within the members of the board, the committee rather, but just people living or working here, whether it's a friendly hello or a helping hand. Those moments really make people, they build togetherness. And so as it relates to our brand and how we kind of execute that, I really want to show that on a couple of different layers. And I think what Josh has been doing with the photography is really capturing those moments of people kind of living in this neighborhood and really experiencing it, and showcasing it in a way that says this is a community. So that notion of us. And then as it relates to the graphic elements that we've used, and you'll see down the road, we really wanted something that was exemplifying of unification and bringing people together. And hopefully we did that. So this was our sort of photo or inspiration mood board. You know, I think even when there's not sort of a person featured in the photo, you get a sense that something is happening that expresses life. And I think that there's something exciting about that, and it draws you in. So the tree, for example, sort of, you know, I believe that's for like veterans or POWs, I'm not sure, but I think like moments like this can really capture our attention. And I would love to bring more of that into the photography. And then our mood board, which I've recently updated, so this is a newer copy. Really, I think there's something exciting and playful, but also, you know, I don't want to say subliminal, but I think there's something subliminal. This notion of Bauhaus and kind of the principles of Bauhaus design about unifying the arts and sort of bringing various disciplines together is very true to UNNC in theory. I think we're bringing together multiple neighborhoods. We're bringing together people sort of in search for the betterment of their livelihoods here. So I think there's a real parallel that could be drawn to this design principle or this design style. And, you know, obviously modernized and kind of made relevant, but I think it could really sort of hold the weight and capture the fun of what UNNC is about. So the colors, Raheem and I were just talking about this, so do my best to articulate this as best I can. Initially, there were, I believe, two colors that we were working with in the current brand. It was sort of a green and an orange. And I really began with the orange, and I wanted to brighten it up and make it a little bit more colorful, not just to bring energy, but I was really reminded of like, if you've ever seen subway seats in New York City, or think of like an orange traffic cone, there's something really municipal and egalitarian about it that I think it's sort of like fun, but it's also it's sort of the people. And then complementing that, I wanted something just as bright, and this ultramarine blue that's sort of reminiscent of the classic blue, which was the color of the year last year. And just sort of fun Snapple fact, it's the most popular color for any corporate identity, and is present in more than 50% of the flags around the world. So it's a very common color. And I think that sort of balance of like energy with being sort of the world or of the people, I think is a really nice mix. And then the soft and sort of warmer beige color and the muted blue really help to balance out the vibrancy and make something fun, that it's something kind of playful but fun. And I feel like it's confident and approachable at the same time. So these, again, and this is something that over time will be refined with the weights in which we use them. So the frequency or the spaces in which we use them. And we start to kind of explore that in the presentation. So the fonts that I'm suggesting, again, something that's totally open for discussion as we move forward, are a modern serif called Bastia. There's the sort of knockout version, and then the filled-in version. Also open to alternating the header versus subheader, but I kind of feel like the knockout version won't be used as frequently. And then balancing that with a sans serif that's really clean and straightforward, you know, really sort of allowing the header and subheader to sing. So these are our current logos. And now we brought this in sort of as a reference point, and just to take a look at it from a bit of a more technical standpoint. I think I think there's something to be said about the number of fonts and the font weights that we're using here. There's typically you don't use more than one or two, and I think the real reason for that is memory. And the more you have, the harder it is for people to kind of like lock that in visually. And it really, as we said, kind of hinders the building of awareness and, you know, ultimately engagement. I think overall too, I feel like with just the variety of weights, it can feel discordant visually. And again, that leads to making it difficult for recall. We've heard occasionally, and we understand the intention behind the tree, and I think there's merit to it, especially with the different color leaves. However, a few people have said that this is a bit of a misdirect, and it could potentially lead somebody to think that it's an environmental organization, which obviously doesn't bode well for us. And then the last thing I would mention is just the colors, and I have another example here. But I think the colors they're beautiful, but I don't know if they're actually doing the work of expressing who we are. And that was always the biggest concern for me. And then just the variety of shades in which we use. I think, again, the more we have, the harder it is to kind of anchor us into, you know, what it is. So that said, this was the proposed new logo, and we had done a few options, and we kind of settled on this one. And for those of us that are interested in what a logo versus a word mark is, word mark is, and I use this example, I think an argument can be made whether the Nike check is a logo or an emblem, but we'll just say logo for now. So the check is the logo, and then the Nike spelled out would be the word mark. And together that's a lockup. And so our logo is, and I'll explain the font types and everything shortly, but our logo is heavily leaning on sort of a graphic geometric element. It's meant to almost be like a stamp. And I think where this is less of a literal impact, but I think over time you'll start to see, especially how it works with the rest of the brand in concert, I think it will leave the feelings that we're hoping to achieve. So that's the logo. And then the word mark, and I'll just give some background on the typefaces as well. But so the logo is made from a wood, like a sort of wood stamp meant for letterpress printing. So these were hand carved and then converted to digital. So there's an element of this that has that hands-on nature, kind of that human component to it. But at the same time, they're bold, they're lively, and it's got this angular sort of note to it that I think is great. And again, I think it holds that sort of playfulness, but in the lockup, it really balances nicely to feel modern, but also authoritative and not too playful at the same time. So the word mark is made of Avenir font, and the spacing is a little bit heavier to add some gravitas to it, but it's a very straightforward sans serif, excuse me, and it's very straightforward, and I think it gives that established feel. And also, fun Snapple fact: Avenir is French for future. So some alternate uses, we have some knockout versions and then a stencil. This is where we would need some time to play and kind of figure out what works where, and really create sort of a logo system that makes sense as it relates to our, a focus on an awareness campaign, future marketing initiatives, any future things that we decide to do. So just some examples of how we're playing with it. We could see a dynamic logo, which I think is really fun, and it becomes more of a graphic element layered throughout. So here we're using the stencil, again, using some moments like somebody playing soccer, it could be somebody playing basketball, or kids on a swing set. just showcasing how it could look with, and this is in black and white, which I think makes it feel a little bit too austere, maybe. I think we need something a little bit friendlier and warmer. Here's with the color palette, and that's what we've kind of used throughout. I think it does a nice job of balancing it out. So the next 3 slides, this one included, is really to give you a sense of how we can start to create awareness, and ideally in a cost-effective way. I don't have pricing on decals at the moment, but I can probably get those. But showcasing our support for local businesses, I think, is a great way. And it's sort of human scale, right? So people are going to go to their coffee shop, they're going to go to their deli, they're going to go to wherever. And this is just a great way to get in front of them and kind of showcase that this business is supported by UNNC. And what that terminology means, we can really kind of flesh that out. It could also be a friend of UNNC, something that's a little bit more, the tone of voice will need to be worked out as Dennis and I and the communication team talked about. So again, human scale, this could be A-frame signs, something that's a bit playful, warm, and inviting. Really crafting how we speak is going to impact the way people interpret our brand. And I think if we get to that next step, I think that's something that we'll have to really be conscious about. We talked about maybe doing like a QR code, and you can purchase those, and doing sidewalk chalk. And right now we're just using the UNNC logo, and it could be something kind of mysterious, and maybe it gets people to kind of just put their phone to it and really check out what is this about. And maybe that leads them to like a form stack or something like that. And, we don't have anything set in stone, but I think we can start to think of ways in which we engage with the community. And I feel like these 3 are really about getting people curious and getting people interested in what we're saying. This is less about outreach and more about awareness. The next, I think it's 2 or 3 slides, including this one, is more about the outreach. So what are we offering, and how are we engaging on a consistent basis with our stakeholders? Do we do like a sort of zine, or a quarterly newspaper, and something that's printed on very cheap paper? That's a neighborhood map highlighting some of our favorite businesses that we're in support of. Is it the yard signs that I know some people have, especially during election times? Is it our website? I think that's an opportunity to really communicate our brand. But again, this is more of like a reactive thing, right? So like it's people coming to us, but maybe it's something as simple as like a flyer in the mail. Hey, come visit our website. It's new, it's updated. We've got information about local businesses and things that are going on in the neighborhoods. The next couple slides are about, and this is what I was talking about experiences. I really think this is an opportunity for us to celebrate our brand and live it out. So, this is an example of like, maybe we're doing sunset yoga in a couple of parks around different neighborhoods, and we're getting people involved, and, it's supported by UNNC. And we had talked about launching the brand with a block party of sorts, maybe inviting some local vendors to kind of set up tents or even have a food trucks situation, and really, be out in the community, getting people excited about what's going on here, and, celebrating us at the same time, and kind of showcasing our support for them. So this was just some mock-ups that we did to kind of showcase what it could be like. And I know there's sometimes, especially around or my experience with election time, it could be great to have people wearing like t-shirts to get people interested in what's going on here. What is this group? So yeah, that's pretty much it. If there's any questions, I'm happy to. Hopefully I did us justice.
You did. You did. Thank you. Thank you, Mickey, aka Michael, for that presentation. Yeah, so right now, we just want to open it up for questions. Like Michael said, this is our interpretation of what UNNC as a brand is. Obviously, there's a million different takes on it. This is our take. This is our take based on a lot of research and a lot of thought and dialogue. But yeah, we really want to hear from this group here before we present it to the big group. So yeah, Dennis, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Michael, fantastic presentation. Love it. I want to tell you the impact of the block stamp on me is just wonderful. It would be easily recognizable at UNNC. So that's so powerful. I do have one suggestion. When you just touched on possibly a flyer, we're talking about getting out paper or hard copy. I would like us to consider maybe little glossy posters in the small businesses. Josh and I are going to be going to some small businesses next week. And I think if we gave them to the coffee shops and the takeout places, we get more eyes on them and use less paper.
Yeah,
It's a great idea.
yeah.
That's why you're on the team, Dennis. Thank you. Teresa.
Hey, Raheem. I viewed your presentation before the meeting and I was able to make some additional notes. So do you want me to just throw them out, or do you want me to go in a particular sequence, or you want me to throw them out and then you can answer all the questions later?
Yeah, I'm here, Michael's here, Gabby's here, Josh is here. If you want to just throw them out and we'll kind of take them one by one.
Okay. First, I want to ask about the first slide, Lift Every Voice. Is that from the song Lift Every Voice and Sing?
So it's funny. We were talking about a tagline, and this was suggested as a possible tagline. We don't have an official recommendation, but this was an idea that kind of definitely stuck with all of us as something that we want to represent. Yeah, and then, yeah. So from my head, it did Lift Every Voice from the Negro National Anthem. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Did you guys by chance do any gather any census data before you started working on the presentation?
We did not gather any census data.
The reason why I ask that is because I feel, let me just go back. Just to say that I'm kind of a pretty direct person, and the presentation was nice. So I'm just going to say what I have to say, and it's not to hurt anybody's feelings. Mickey, do you live in our community?
You're muted. There you go.
I live in West Adams.
West Adams part of the UNNC, or just the West Adams neighborhood down the way?
I think I'm just outside of the border, technically.
Okay. They have historic homes there too. So the reason why I asked about the census data, because I think it could have helped inform who we are, not only the age and the ethnic makeup. It may have given you more insight into who we are. Let me just say it that way. Part of what our name is historic. And even though the graphics are nice, and I have some more comments on that, I don't think we are addressing that enough. So that's one thing. On page 16, so some of these comments I'm sorry, Raheem, some of them may be about the actual presentation. Some of them may be about the bigger issue. So on page 16, the graphic with the gates, I believe it's on page 16. It's the one, it's a little bit different than the one that you sent to me, Raheem, because there was another, where the house is, there was another gate. I just want to say that personally, I don't like gates because I feel they're keeping people out. And this one, even though this graphic on the top is, I mean, I like, the structure of it. It has a lock on it, and it looks like it's like trying to protect and trying to keep people out, or to imply somehow that we need to be secure. And I just don't like that. That's just my personal thing. So I'd rather see something open. So I get it that these are your slides, so I'm just talking about what I want to say. On page 10.
That's fine.
Now, on page 10, and this is, I just think there may be a level of implicit bias here. Page 10, I believe there's a paragraph at the top. Oh, maybe it's the next one. Is that this paragraph here? And this is why I think the census data may have given us some insight, given you some insight. Blah, 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 blah. We made up a variety of stakeholders, renters, owners. I'd like to know why renters was before owners. How many people in our footprint are owners? Why did that language play out like that? So that's just a comment that I'd like to make.
Oh, wait, okay, so I'm really curious, just kind of digging out a little bit more, the order of renters and owners, like what does that say to you?
It's, if you were to say to me, well, our census data says that our population, we have more renters than we do owners, then I would be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But because I live in the Avenue, so we have a lot of single family homes here. So I'm wondering who wrote that and why that word choice order. And I'm wondering, is there something else going on? Just some unconscious reason to put renters instead of owners.
Am I muted?
Okay.
Am I muted?
No, you're not.
Sorry. If I can respond, I mean, I recall when we met with Hugo, that was a big sort of factor for him, that he felt like UNNC hadn't served as best as they could the renters in the community. And so I don't think I was very conscious about putting it in any place in particular, but I remember wanting to include it specifically because of Hugo's and our discussion. And I can bring back the notes, but I agree. Like,
No. And we do have a lot of renters. I would just, if you were to say to me, well, census data says that, 59% of our footprint are renters, I'm like, okay.
Well,
and maybe now I understand, since you're saying that Hugo brought it up, that's why you led with that instead of with owners.
And to kind of, I think to take it even a little bit further, I think that's a refrain that I've heard as I've been on the board for the last 4 years. And I think it's not a surprise, like renters don't feel seen all the time. It's the same reason why if I'm writing, historically we would write he or she. When I'm writing that, I write she or he, just to kind of like bring some balance back to what's been imbalanced for so long. And I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we think that renters are given the same priority as homeowners in our neighborhoods. And I think it's okay in some spaces to give renters that first slot, especially something as simple as listing out renters and owners. I think anything we can do to make renters feel more prioritized, more seen, me personally, I'm all for it. And that's why I think when I read this and saw this in that order, it spoke to me. Even as a homeowner myself, like I feel like we need to do a lot more to prioritize renters.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
And it's not a more than, it's just.
I'm sorry, I'm still talking. Who is that? Who is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Gabby?
was adding
okay.
to what Raheem said.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's just to make sure that it's not for everyone, here, it's not a more than owners, it's just a more in amount, I would say, amount of attention. Go ahead.
Okay. So I just want to go back to the census data.
Mhm.
Also, I think if you had, I don't want to get into a big thing about gentrification, so let's put that aside. If we were to access all the census data, then maybe that might have informed some of, what is the word I want? Some of the decisions made in the presentation. Let me just leave that alone right there. On page.
Teresa, and look, Teresa, like honestly, like even if the things that I don't agree with, I appreciate your feedback 100%. But I think it's helpful if you do get as specific as you can, because I don't want to like leave this conversation with any like questions about what does she mean, what like. So if
Okay.
you have something to say, please be as direct as you can be.
I will, let me do my other really quick ones, and then I can come back to a deeper issue. So on page 40, this is sort of about the graphics, and I hope I don't want to take up too much time because I know other people may want to talk. Okay, I can't see that graphic. Go back one slide, please, Mickey. That outline, I can't see. I mean, I can see it, but it is not pronounced enough. So that's one thing. Also on page 41. And then Raheem, this is kind of what I'm talking about, sort of the implicit bias. There are a lot of basketball shots in here. Now I'm wondering, why are there so many basketball shots? Who did that? Why did that go in and not trees or flowers or senior citizens or some other stuff? So I'm not saying it, because we all have that. We all carry that with us. So that's just something. Also, the word empathetic, which I think is great. I think this on page 28, where we talk about unity, could we include inclusiveness? I'm not sure. That only came up one time, and that was with Lizzie. And maybe that's not something that people talked about. But if we are in a gentrifying neighborhood, then maybe inclusiveness is something that could also be included. I really like the awareness slides, the one like that was in front of the coffee shop, or the one actually go back. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Go back a few slides to the old and the new. I mean, the two old slides. This one right here. Okay, the one before, I don't like the colors. As you mentioned, Mickey, those, not this one, the next one, these are beautiful colors. And I think somehow I would like, I don't know if this is possible, and I'm just throwing my 2 cents out, Raheem. I would have liked to see an old font or an old logo, like from 100 years ago, modernized and kind of created in a really cool way, so we can still see the historic, the oldness, but some other kind of freshness and future, like I'm moving toward the future. And I don't know how to incorporate that. I'm not an artist in the traditional sense, but there's something to be said about, I love these colors, this arts and craft, graphic design on the side with the flower like that. I kind of like that. As I mentioned about the senior citizens, I have a lot of senior citizens. I don't know, I don't know if this would be appealing to them. I love the idea about elevating our profile. I think that is really important. I already mentioned the inclusiveness, the word, that word mark thing you were talking about, Mickey. I'm sorry, I don't know the lingo on that, but I really thought it was clean and I like that. Yeah, the United Neighborhoods Council, I love that. I'm not, sorry, I just don't like the graphic. I appreciate what Dennis said, but I don't necessarily like that. And the last thing is that, as I have already said, I would like to see something that is more reflective of the historic nature of our community. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. Can I add something? Is that okay?
Of course.
And just more as food for thought for everybody, and why. So part of my work and what I typically do with brands is when we go through the like strategy component, we're trying to create some sort of metrics by which we can measure the effectiveness, because we all have our sort of personal preferences when it comes to color, style, taste. So I always think it's important for us to think, less do I like it and more do I think it's effective. And that's a challenge to try to get to, because We all have our proclivities, but I think, yeah, I think it's always good to kind of go in with that framework. Do I think it's achieving the sort of that balance of like,
But Mickey, can you explain to me, how do those colors, forget about the design, but how do those colors reflect our community?
Sure, yeah, I don't, I agree that I don't think that neither the logo or the word mark or the colors are very historic. However, I will say, like, the blue, for example, is sort of similar to like an Yves Klein blue, which, right, that's been around since the 1950s, 60s. So that's something that could be stated as old, but it's
No,
not.
not in this context, sorry, because my house is 110 years old. And we have 3 HPOZs in our footprint. So when we say old, we mean like old, not 50s, mid-century stuff like that. That's where I'm coming from. So
Sure. I no, but to your point, I don't actually think that anything in the colors or the logo or the word mark is necessarily very old or traditional. However, I think the thing that we were trying to achieve, and maybe to your mention of some of the action shots, the idea was to really convey history through photography and moments through photography. And then the logo, the word mark, and the graphic elements would kind of work as almost like a museum, right? Where it kind of falls to the background and it's kind of this supporting element. And then whatever is in front. So like the images, whether it be a child running through a sprinkler or Hattie McDaniel's house, which we have in our presentation, it's showcasing the thing. And then our logo is working as like a graphic element in support of that thing.
okay, and I just want to say, I do like some of the photographs, like the roller skates, some of those, that action shot where the shot was taken from here up. I do like that. I mean, those felt fresh and young and active. So there are things in there that I do like. So, okay, I'm going to stop, let other people.
Okay.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Mickey, for jumping in. But I really want to emphasize what he said. I think like this process has been so crazy for our little team, because like it really, like, he hit the nail on the head. Like it's hard because it's kind of trying to divorce yourself from like what you like versus what you think will really resonate with people. Like it's a really difficult process sometimes, and like you'll find that like the two are here and here. But anyway, so I think that's a really good point, Mickey. But anyway, lots of other comments. So Lizzie, you're next. I think Lizzie, and then Josh, then Laura, and then Rosie.
Is there any way I can jump in?
Sorry.
Just to answer some of Teresa's questions?
Sure.
When it comes
Sure. Sorry, Lizzie, but yeah.
I just wanted to say, when it comes to the photography, I'm a little new to the neighborhood, but I do see that there is a lot of history. So I try to add like Hattie McDaniel's house, Marvin Gaye's house, and I talked to Dennis a little bit about this morning. It's a lot of history to cover, so I'm just trying to photograph as much as I can, but I am trying to add it in there. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Josh. Lizzie.
Yes. Hello, everyone. This is the second time I believe I'm watching the presentation. So thank you again for all your hard work. I really appreciate the thought behind this presentation. I had not seen the logo, so this was a new, fresh thing for me. And I think it will take me probably some time to process it, warm up to it. It's so drastically different from the previous ones. So I'm just gonna hold my thought on if I like it or not. I'm not sure right now, but my first instinct was, when I see the U, I immediately think of the logo for Univision, which is the #1 Spanish-speaking TV station in the country, right? So, but aside from that, so that was kind of, oh, okay. but that's C. I have a problem with the C because I immediately thought Pac-Man, and that kind of turns me off because I think it subtracts a seriousness to the logo. It's heavy, it's black, and it's a stamp. So it's supposed to be impactful, but I don't know about that C. So that's one thing that I thought I had a problem with, and I don't know if these letters are part of a font themselves, but maybe I don't know if there's some way to maybe, I don't know how other people will react, but that was my first instinct upon looking at this. Also, I don't think I made this comment in my that first time when we saw this without the logo, but I think I did mention it afterwards, maybe at some meeting, maybe the governing board meeting or another communications meeting. We are talking here about inclusiveness, about unity, and I am really glad, makes me happy to see that in terms of representation, I see a lot of people of color when talking about the humans, the human beings portrayed in these photographs. However, within that people of color group, I don't see I think there's a lack of Latino faces and Asian faces. And that is a big part, I think, of what makes us who we are. I understand that this is the era of Black Lives Matter, and I totally support that. And I am glad to see that fairly represented in this presentation. But I think that we are also, the Spanish-speaking population is pretty significant. I have taught at Dorsey once, and those were the two, Asians is part of our historic past, of our historic populations of the past, but right now, probably not as much. If anything, there's more Korean, more of a Korean population here, but it's still within the UNNC footprint. So I would like to see more faces like those in this presentation. Also, I was gonna make one more comment, and I'm sorry, it escapes my mind, but I leave it at that for now. But again, other than that, I'm really, really excited about the marketing ideas, the outreach ideas, and also a concern for many of us is that we are this year, and who knows for the long term, our budget has diminished significantly. So, but I think that within social media, in digital format, we can certainly promote the brand and show it. I love that barcode idea. So things that are low cost, but I just don't know, banners, I think it's totally out of the budget for now. But yes, I would definitely support change and transition. And I think this is good. So thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. And like I said to Teresa, like, we're here for the feedback, whether it's positive or negative. Like we're all grown up. So I think your point about the lack of Latino and Asian faces is something that we'll definitely take a look at. And this is why we want to show this around and kind of get different eyes on it to make sure that we are dialed in on who we are. So thank you, Lizzie, for your honest feedback. Laura and then Rosie.
Okay. So I'm back because I feel like when we have these discussions, we should also be on video. Can you hear me? Yes. So I actually really, again, love the presentation, but I'm also agreeing with some of the comments. So I'm gonna kind of go forwards and backwards. I love the lifting every voice, but I would add ... the other tagline we have, because your voice counts. I mean, however you do it, but we've been using your voice counts. I love lifting that message even higher, which is lifting every voice. So however that could happen creatively. And I agree about the fence and the gates around the church. The fencing around the church is one of my big bugaboos, and everybody else's who are trying to create pedestrian friendly Crenshaw, and yet we have a photo in our presentation of the one piece of Crenshaw that gets in the way. So I think either a kind of step inside the gates, because it's such a beautiful cathedral, and retake the photo without the fence around it. I mean, there is a fence around it, but this isn't journalism, because it's a really, really beautiful cathedral. And I'm talking about West Angeles on Crenshaw, but get inside the gate so we don't see all that's fencing to keep people out. I think the woodcut idea is really very clever, because it does go to the old and the new. And you guys probably don't even know that my thesis was on Laszlo Moholy-Nagy and the Bauhaus, all the way back those many years. So I've been to the Bauhaus. It's one of my favorite, I wasn't there for very long, like 4 hours, but it's still one of my very favorite places ever that I visited. So I have great empathy for this, but I don't know for sure how it works with UNNC. So I think by the board meeting, I'd like to hear more about what the nexus is, but also when you, on the page 37, where we have the old Art Nouveau-ish, I want to say, I'm trying to, the stylized craftsman, arts and crafts, Art Nouveau flower actually is what over time informed the Bauhaus design. I mean, in other words, it sort of was something that moved forward in the art world in time. So this is more fluid. So, in other words, I want to remind you that this Art Nouveau-y thing is on banners on streetlights all over town. So if there's a way to transition more to the new logo and still reference this piece of it, which is not logo, I'm not talking about the tree now, but it is one of our iconic looks. So if there's a way to transition, because we're not really transitioning, we're going to have both, right? So how does the one work with the other? And to that point, if you go to slide 49, which has a taco truck, I think, right. But you see, that's our green with the orange and the blue. And so I feel like since we have materials that will be in the red, orangey, browny color and the green, and then we might be creating new materials with the Bauhaus woodcut with the blue, how do they relate to each other? So is there a way to incorporate that green back into your color palette? So that when we are sitting at a table 2 years from now with our stand-up, I don't even know what you call them, but we have these stand-up posters, and then we have different materials on the table to hand out, that they feel like they are together and not just two different generations of stuff. Can we transition? Because that's economically better. And I'm trying not to be critical, because I actually love all this. And we are many neighborhoods. You know, we just had a kind of deep discussion yesterday at Planning and Zoning about the housing element and how the city planning department has suddenly eliminated references to neighborhoods and neighborhood character. And that's what we're all about. So somehow I think we need to bring back into this and our ideas of marketing that we have many distinct neighborhoods. The reason we came together with the title, The United Neighborhoods of, and the historic, but Arlington Heights, West Adams, and Jefferson Park. And the West Adams in the middle was meant to incorporate Harvard Heights, West Adams Heights, Angeles, all the ones that weren't listed were meant to be incorporated because they're all part of the West Adams district. So I think they're distinct but united. And how do we include that somehow in as we're moving forward? We have all these great neighborhoods. They're distinct, but they are united together to lift every voice and make every voice count. I mean, something trite like that. And for Joshua, if he's still here, I've got a huge list of iconic, culturally important homes and buildings, and I'd be really happy to talk to you in terms of as you go forward for photography, not necessarily for this, but for our uses. And I think the only other thing I wanted to say is Lizzie, and Mickey, you've probably not seen this, but Lizzie had created in the middle of the night before our retreat, she had created a word cloud, but it was a tree, but it was also all kinds of concepts. And I wonder if, Lizzie, if you'd be willing to share that with Mickey, so that, you know, because somehow she had all kinds of words, names of neighborhoods, but also our values. And that is another thing that I thought was really very interesting. It's completely different than what you're showing us. Last question would be on our stationery and some of our other stuff, we would have, you know, UNNC, United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council, but then we also have the long name with, you know, the naming of those neighborhoods, the United Neighborhoods of the, you know, it's the longest name in the whole city of neighborhood councils. But we have to say the whole long thing some of the time. So how, when you're kind of fleshing out the logo, how do we do that? I mean, in other words, it's another piece. And would it be a different font? Would it just run along the bottom? I mean, you know, I don't know the answers, but noting that we need to do that on some of the stationery. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Laura. Again, lots of really good feedback that we'll take and consider. I do want to say it's interesting when we look back at the old logo, or the current logo, excuse me. I wasn't there, but I can pretty much guarantee that way more discussion is happening now about where we might go for this for a new logo than what happened with the existing logo, right? And so it's just something for all of us to just kind of be mindful of, like, as we are a big mass of people trying to like come to a consensus about like these different ideas of what we each think is like good and nice and whatever. So it's a really tall task, and we're very much aware of that.
Well, Raheem, noting that I too was not there when this was all created. I mean, I was alive and paying it and working with UNNC, but I wasn't there. Oh, you know, I'm sorry. I do have one other thing, just in about that census, which we don't have the current stuff, but there's some projections. And for our area in general, and this is so general, but and I don't know if it makes a real difference, but the portion of UNNC north of the freeway is majority Latino, Latina, Latinx with an X, with plurality Asian and white. And then the area south of the freeway is still majority Latinx, Latino, Latina, with plurality African American and white. So the Asian kind of starts falling off, drifting off south of the freeway. But, you know, if you just look at our board, we sort of kind of, without the Asian, reflect those numbers. So probably we should have more photos, that are reflective of that totalness. But those are projections. Those are not real numbers. We won't have the real numbers probably for another year. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Rosie, you're next.
Hello. Sorry, I can't show myself because I'm painting my grandchildren's bedroom in my home. So
All good.
the proposed logo and wordmark looks a little too newish to me for our historic type of organization in our neighborhoods. And yeah, we did talk about the United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council the way we have it currently. The photographs, since we have not had very many events for the past year and a half, is there any way to incorporate maybe some older photos? They may not look as sharp, or some of them may be as sharp, or maybe they can be tweaked a little bit. But how, if any way, we can get any of the older photos incorporated? And also some pictures of some Asian places that we do have in our neighborhood that are still working, like the credit union and Cashew Realty, and a couple other places that we can get photos of, because that is part of the history of our neighborhood council, especially here in Jefferson Park. I did agree with Laura and Teresa regarding the gates. Yeah, that one on the top left definitely needs to go. And the one with West Angeles needs to be reshot. It's a nice structure, but those gates definitely should be shown. Otherwise, I have not got a chance to look at all of the pictures in here, but it was a good presentation. I just think we need to show a little bit more inclusivity of our diverse neighborhoods throughout UNNC. That's it.
Cool. Thank you, Rosie. Appreciate that. And then we're back to Lizzie and then Teresa. I'm sorry, was it Teresa then Lizzie? Sorry.
I think it was me. I just have a quick question. I'm wondering, why are we working on the brand thing? Did you guys vote on it before? I'm not trying to make it a long thing. I just thought, since we're working on it, you asked for our opinions. If it's supposed to happen, then it can happen. I just thought maybe, the previous board, you guys had decided, oh, you want a new brand, and you're working on the new brand. I'm not trying to make this a long drawn out thing. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. And yeah, it wasn't a conversation that happened at the board level. This happened at the communications committee level. I don't know if you're here from Mickey's opening, but as we were designing stuff for the elections, like we kind of kept coming back to this question of like, who are we? And that's like a bigger question as we think about things into the future. And honestly, like as we've gone through this process, like I think this is something that should happen every new board. Like every new board should kind of take the identity of UNNC into its hands and define it and go from there. This isn't something that should just happen once. It should happen on a continual basis.
A new logo every board?
No, I'm not saying have a new logo, but I think each new board should consider what the logo is and decide from there if that represents them at that moment in time. Maybe we come to a new logo and that becomes our logo for the next 20 years, but there's some point where that logo won't be relevant anymore. What point is that? I don't know if that's 4 years or 10 years or 40 years. There's some point though, and we shouldn't. I right now, I don't think if we vote on this logo and say yes, I don't think this logo should be the logo forever and ever, even if it is my personal preference. I think each board should have the power and the ability to kind of define that. Lizzie.
Yes, hi. So some additional suggestions that just came to mind. I think Rosie mentioned about some of the businesses that are related to the Japanese American history here in Jefferson Park, especially. And I would like to suggest the Cashew Realty sign is on Jefferson Boulevard. There's also Grace Pastries, almost also on Jefferson, almost hitting Crenshaw. So those two are vintage signs that would inform the audience of our history. Also, I think I would also like to see again touching on us being historic and this pool that we have right now, not a conflict, but maybe some, I don't know. I just see it sometimes on our community pages that this issue of gentrification and the old timers. So anyway, I think I would also like to see more senior faces in this presentation, again, because old residents, I mean, the people who really feel that they have lived here for their entire lives. So many of them are what, hitting now 60, 70 years old. So I think it would be good for them to be represented here. Also, some maybe shots of businesses or people actually working. I remember, Josh, there was this photo for the elections of someone working, maybe it was Alibi Coffee, with a postcard in Spanish. I love that. I think that was one of my favorite shots. So, some people going about their daily lives here. What else? Oh, and also, because we have the UNNC footprint is, sometimes the freeway kind of, we're talking, oh, north of the freeway, up the hill, down the hill. So maybe it'd be nice to have some shots of the freeway, but the overpasses, so that as bridges that unify us. I think that would be cool, and this chaotic, and that sometimes we are, and I have to say this, that there was a meeting the other day where they were talking about characterizing Jefferson Park as a quiet pastoral neighborhood, which to me was totally not true. We do have pastoral neighborhoods in the UNNC footprint, but Jefferson Park is not one of them. So we are pretty urban, and I think maybe we should be comfortable with that. That's who we are. So maybe the freeway and the overpasses. So thank you again.
Sorry, Lizzie, can you please repeat the first two places that you spoke of when you started?
Yes, Josh. On Jefferson Boulevard, and I have my own pictures. I can send them to you so that you know where they are. But Cashew Realty wasn't a real estate business. They are no longer in business, but there's the sign is still there. There's currently a senior citizen that before the pandemic, where senior citizens could go have a meal, have culturally sensitive interaction, because most of them are the older Japanese Americans that maybe used to live here, or maybe live around Lamert Park now, and they would come to this building. So the building is there, the sign is there, and there's also Grace Pastries down west, almost getting into Crenshaw. I'll send you pictures.
Thank you, Lizzie. And I just want to say, because we've gotten a lot of really great suggestions, and thank you all. We're obviously, and some of you guys have suggested specific things we take photos of, and we'll definitely do our best. But one thing that we definitely want to stay mindful of is we're not trying to create a presentation that has a photo of every single historic place in our neighborhood. It'd be impossible, or just a million pages. So what we're trying to really do is capture the essence of our neighborhoods through some of the photos, some place that we capture. So if in this next version of the presentation that you're going to see in a few weeks, if you don't see the specific photo that you're mentioning, don't take it personally, but just know that, trying to really capture an essence and not necessarily just the specific things that is sometimes called out. Jasmine, you're next.
Yeah, I just really wanted to say that this looks like it took a lot of work and thinking and effort. So I just wanted to appreciate you guys for taking on this endeavor and putting as much, heart and energy into it as you have. I think as far as like feedback goes, I think I just would echo that maybe if it's possible to tie in some of the older tones or just something to I think retain like the historic nature, like bring it also to make sure that the brand is still inviting to some of our senior residents. I think that would be useful because I feel like we're already transitioning into spaces that are not necessarily accessible to everyone. And so just making sure that we're keeping that in mind, that we do have a very broad range of folks as it pertains to not just race, but age and accessibility. And yeah, I think that was primarily it for me. Then again, yeah, diversity, a bit more diversity as far as age and demographics in the photos. And then also just to answer like I guess an earlier question or inquiry, the vast majority of our council are renters. It ranges, I think, across the neighborhoods between 60 to a bit over 80%. So I don't think that, at least as a renter, I don't think I saw, renters being being put above owners, but I do appreciate that sentiment of being mentioned, because I would agree that it does often seem like renters are overlooked. I think not just in our neighborhood, but across the city. But I do think that's important to mention, that the economic differences is with diversity as well, in sort of like our mission or our understanding of who lives here. So I appreciate that as well. But yeah, just thank you guys again so much for your hard work.
Thank you, Jasmine. Yeah, in my notes, I have historic written down with the big box around it. So I'm sure Mickey and Gabby and Josh do too. It's something that we'll definitely take another look at and kind of see how we address. So thank you guys all for your comments about the historic nature of our neighborhoods. Laura.
Rahim, I just have maybe 30 seconds. So I'm reminded when we talk about diversity, one of the reasons I moved to this neighborhood, so many years ago, 4 decades ago, but it was the spiritual diversity. I mean, it's very tolerant neighborhood of all kinds of spirituality. We not just have Church Row on Adams, but if you look at each of those faiths, they're really very different from each other. But throughout the neighborhoods, we have New Age, we have Buddhist, we have Muslim. I mean, in smaller mosques and smaller Zen Buddhist centers. So we are really diverse. But I moved here because because this was also one of the most tolerant parts of Los Angeles, where nobody was really judgy about, a mixed race couple, what religion you practice, if you were a Scientologist, that was okay. Not maybe now, but at the time. So I don't know if we need to reflect all these things, but it was just another thing that I thought of. So that's all.
Yeah, I think thank you, Laura. I think this is definitely one of our challenges, that like our neighborhoods are so many things. Like, how do we put that into a presentation where we're still trying to communicate so many other things? Like what photos do we use in those short little moments between other things that we're trying to like educate people on? It's a challenge. But it's one that I think we're up to the task. We'll definitely take another look. I know I have a full page of notes here. Gabby, Mickey, Josh, anything to say or contribute?
I think the only thing that I want to emphasize is that a lot of the survey responses were used and were considered when creating the presentation. It wasn't just like us including what we wanted to include, but I really, we did a lot of sitting down with the chairs and, we didn't use data necessarily, but we collected responses from the people that are representing the rest of our residents, right? So I just wanted to emphasize that because I'm not sure how it came across, but we really wanted to include the responses from the people that are out there, in the communities with their neighbors and, hanging out on Sundays and, with their kids playing scooters, out there. And so we were trying to gather all of that information, all of those responses, and really illustrate them here. I think we did do some of that, but we'll gather this feedback and incorporate some of it into the next iteration of our presentation. And, just a big shout out to Mickey for taking so much time and care in making this presentation. Like, he really read through every single response more than once to make sure that he included everybody's feedback. And so that's really it.
I would like to kind of go off of what Gabby said and say, Mickey, excellent job with the presentation. As far as the photography goes, I took everything in. I completely understand that we've been working through it. I'm trying to get more diverse photos. Some people just don't like their photos taken right now. I've been kicked out of a couple of restaurants. I've had some people tell me no. It really takes a while. So if it looks like it's just basketball shots, that's just because I live next to a basketball court and they let me take their photos. but I tried the soccer field. I tried a lot of different places. They tell me no sometimes. So I've gone around with Mickey, and then Dennis and I have talked about actually going around together as well. So we'll get more diverse photos into the presentation very soon. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
And this is just the beginning, really. So we thank you all for telling us, we need more of this, more of that, because it's going to get Josh's, brain going on where we can go and walk around the neighborhood. So thank you for that.
I'd like to add just something to it too. Also, it's been great working with everyone too on this. This has been a really, really fun time. I know just from my personal experience in doing this, and anytime creating something to replace something else or something from scratch, it's always met with a bit of hesitancy because it's different. And I think Lizzie, you may have made this comment before about the U kind of feeling like it's from Univision, and the C kind of feeling like it's from Pac-Man. I actually think those things are good. I think the fact that it can be from two very diverse things and exist in the same space is actually a plug for us. And I'm not saying it's necessarily this logo, but I think to kind of be able to have that recall, and I think it's almost there. I'm not saying this is final, but I do believe that this is the direction that I could see this going, obviously with all of the notes that we received too. So but yeah, that's my one last plug for it. So and thank you everybody for your time today.
Thank you again. And the last thing that I'll say is, as we kind of continue to kind of work through this, one thing that I feel is really important also is that, we're definitely going to continue to be a collaborative committee. Like, we know that we don't exist in a vacuum, so we'll keep bringing stuff to the board and vetting things. But at the same time, Just like I am going to trust, our environmental committee to kind of do what they do and like kind of live in their expertise. Like, I think there comes a point too where, we're hoping that we can like build a trust with the committee, with the board, where you guys will kind of trust us to kind of like take things and go with them. We have a lot of ideas that we really want to execute and move on and to kind of elevate our board in our neighborhoods. But it's going to take like kind of building a trust with the board in order to kind of be able to go get unleashed to do that. So this is all part of that process. And I think like us being here and being ready to listen, that's one of the things that we think is important as a committee and as a board in its entirety, right? Being able to listen to feedback and take it in and really be okay with it, have honest conversations. So we're trying to model that for the board so this can kind of be something that goes forward and it kind of becomes one of our, continues to be one of our pillars. But yeah, it's all kind of with the hope of building a trust that that we'll be able to kind of like really execute on our ideas the way that we see them. So thank you guys all for your time and your feedback. I promise we've all been taking notes. We're going to have a meeting next week to kind of digest it all. And you'll see another better version of this presentation in a couple of weeks. And if any of you guys have any further thoughts between now and then and want to come back to us with anything or want to sit in on one of our creative meetings, you're more than welcome, please. And that's all I got.
And if you are interested, you can just send us an email. Raheem, we have our communications email, right?
Yeah, it's just com@unnc.org. We'll come to Gabby and myself.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all the work.
Yes, thank you, Raheem. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
evening,
Teresa.
everybody. Bye. And
Thank
thank
you
you
very
too,
much.
Mickey.
All
Thank
right.
you too,
Nicely
Mickey.
done.
I didn't.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mickey.
Bye, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.